I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Thank you for staying with us to this last segment of our very interesting interview on medical marijuana. We're talking today to Pat Rimoshytus. He is the manager of Green Cross of Rhode Island. It's a membership organization where caregivers in the medicinal marijuana field can come together and exchange information and be available to treat patients. So, Pat, once again, thank you very, very much for spending a little time with us today. At the end of the last segment, we talked about the waivers that you now use. Mm-hmm. Do you envision any additional legal involvement when marijuana becomes more legal nationwide and things like product liability lawsuits inevitably come to pass? And the suits, as you say, may not necessarily be because somebody died because they took your product.
Sure.
They may be because that they didn't get well because they took your product. And that's something that people have to know and acknowledge beforehand. So you have a waiver today. Talk a little bit about its limits, and are you envisioning getting, tightening that up any?
Sure. Well, as you know, I'm not a physician or an MD, and I would never make any claims for anyone to do anything adverse to what their doctor tells to them. Well, we consider marijuana right now to be more of a health supplement for you. That's the kind of category that we look at it in. As far as the danger from the waiver, that's why on an individual basis we sit down and speak to everyone. We consult with them to make sure that they understand what could possibly happen to them and that what they should and should not do, what they shouldn't try to do when they leave.
So you have a personal relationship with each of the 5 patients that you yourself deal with?
Well, I manage the organization, so I meet with patients as an expert, and each individual caregiver can bring their 5 patients in for myself and one of the other staff if they have questions.
Okay, but it is that fairly small, I mean, you're not mass marketing this,
oh, no.
So the fairly small, high contact relationship that you have is probably going to be a benefit to all of that. Now, once legalization becomes general, we talked earlier about the United States as a government granting itself a monopoly on the development of products. Do you envision that these products, especially the medicinal products, will be run through the FDA? Will there be the rigorous testing we see in other pharmaceuticals?
I would certainly hope that there is. The drawback to rigorous testing with other pharmaceuticals is that it takes years, decades for them to get on the market. This particular medicine is already on the market, so that causes a problem for the FDA on how to regulate it. That might be one of the drawbacks as why the DEA didn't reschedule it recently. So basically, when we have patients come in and they need caregivers, we associate the two. And we think that, foreseeable in the future, that if it does go to the recreational point, that more people will be open to it. There'll be less of an outlook as far as what patients are concerned. And we like to think that we could, if they would embrace it as part of the economy, it could. A lot of people are being hired in states that have recreationalized it. There's a lot of new income, certainly a lot of tax revenue that comes in. Once the government allows universities and other organizations to start actually doing constructive tests, much like other countries have done, the Israelis, the Spanish were years behind them, I think that it will be more and more acceptable.
We'll talk a little bit more about the future in just a minute. Before we do, I'd like to ask you about any additional medical marijuana products that you think you're going to bring into your catalog as time goes by.
Sure. We have a myriad of products right now, basically all the way from flower, which is what people are usually accustomed to. That's the marijuana flower itself. And then... and
that's for smoking.
That's for smoking. We try to encourage people to use a vaporizer, which basically leaves most of the carcinogens still in the product, because there are carcinogens in the plant product. It leaves most of that behind by a simple process. So vaporizing, we try to encourage our patients to use, or edible medicines where they don't have to affect their lungs in any way and they can get it into their system. We didn't have a chance to speak about it, but all mammals have a cannabinoid system and they have receptors in their body. So it's only during these past 80 years of prohibition that our bodies have been without cannabis as a regular influence. So, I mean, from 1837 to 1937, it was prescribed in over 100 different medicines in this country. So.
Sure. Pretty interesting. Okay, so you'll basically be open to anything that will be safe and effective for your patients.
Yeah, it'll be safe and effective. I'm concerned with marketing, of course, and I'm concerned with packaging. Obviously, some of the products can and have been made into products that look like they could be children's products, and I'm very much adamantly for concerns, labeling, things like that, markings that don't commercialize it as far as juveniles would be concerned.
Well, my guess is that the big marketing push that'll come from the large companies that try and supply the recreational market will be about recreational marijuana and not necessarily about medical initially. Let me just ask you to sum things up for us now. In what do you see happening in your industry? The industry has actually been at work in Rhode Island for almost 10 years now.
Yes.
And what do you see 10 years from now and 10 years after that?
Well, I have pretty big visions for the future as far as cannabis is concerned, because I'm in the market. I've seen what it can do for people. I've seen how it eases their stress on a daily basis. And I've experienced it with it on my own. I think within the next 10 years, we have 24 states right now that have legalized it in some form or another, 4 states that have legalized it recreational. The trend is going to be embracing this product and hopefully the economy that comes along with it. I'd like to say 10 years from now, the entire country has come about change. The drug has been rescheduled. It's really an opportunity here for us to put regulations and taxation in place so that it keeps it away from youths and also brings a legitimate medicine to the people that can be tested, that can be careful, that they can be a safe medicine, and that they can keep it away from children at the same time.
Sure, and you brought up a very interesting point that's always kind of troubled me about it, and that, you know, the anecdotal evidence from places like the Caribbean is that smoking marijuana can be even more harmful to your lungs than smoking tobacco. And if that proves true, one of the things that the increased investigation and research into marijuana products will do, obviously,
Sure.
is make safer versions of it.
Sure. I haven't done many studies as far as, I haven't read a lot as far as cannabis versus cigarettes. I know that there are carcinogens in both, and again, there are many different ways to be able to consume this product, not necessarily smoking, which would be equal to cigarettes.
But I think in your vision, what you've just told us is with the spread of products that will come about after legalization and after big corporations start doing some of this research, you'll probably get away from smoking it because there'll be fairer, faster, and funnier ways
Sure.
to ingest not just the product, but the part of the product you need.
Yes, absolutely. I would envision that it's going to go into that future. And again, we can control the milligrams here in Rhode Island in my small little business, so I can imagine that throughout the country it can be embraced as a real medicine, and even the recreational part can be embraced as not overly dangerous as far as it being regulated and licensed, similar to alcohol. The taxes in Colorado alone were 2/3 what they received in alcohol taxes in their first year.
Pat, I'm going to have to leave it at that. It's been very interesting talking to you. And giving essentially a socially acceptable slant to the marijuana use and operation here in the state. Please stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Richard, the Portsmouth pundit, is about to bring our show home, and thank you very much for watching Common Sense.